Day 287 Maccabean Revolt, 1 Maccabees 6, Sirach 16 through 18, Proverbs 22 verses 17 through 21. Let's begin. 1 Maccabees 6. And King Antiochus was traveling through the upper regions, and he heard that the city of Elamites in Persia was very noble and abundant in silver and gold, and that the temple in it was very opulent, and that there were, in that place, coverings of gold, and breastplates and shields, which Alexander, the son of Philip, king of Macedonia, who reigned first in Greece, had left behind. So he came and sought to seize the city and to pillage it. And he was not able, because this plan became known to those who were in the city. And they rose up in battle, and he fled away from there, and he departed with great sadness, and he returned into Babylon. And someone arrived to report to him in Persia that those who were in the land of Judah were forced to flee the camp. And that Lysias went forth with a particularly strong army, and he was forced to flee before the face of the Jews, and that they were strengthened by the weapons, and resources, and many spoils which they seized from the camps they demolished. And that they had destroyed the abomination, which he had established on the altar that was in Jerusalem, and that the sanctuary, just as before, had been encircled with high walls, along with Bethser, his city. And it happened that, when the king heard these words, he was terrified and very moved. And he fell down on his bed, and he fell into feebleness out of grief. For it had not happened to him as he had intended. And he was in that place through many days. For a great grief was renewed in him, and he concluded that he would die. And he called all his friends, and he said to them, Sleep has withdrawn from my eyes, and I am declining, and my heart has collapsed out of anxiety. And I said in my heart, How much trouble has come to me, and what floods of sorrow there are, where I am now! I used to be cheerful and beloved in my power. Truly, now, I remember the evils that I did in Jerusalem, from which place I also took away all the spoils of gold and silver that were in it, and I sent to carry away the inhabitants of Judah without cause. Therefore, I know that it is because of this that these evils have found me. And behold, I perish with great sorrow in a foreign land. Then he called Philip, one of his friends, and he placed him first over all his kingdom. And he gave him the diadem, and his robe, and his ring, so that he would guide Antiochus, his son, and raise him, and so that he would reign. And King Antiochus died there, in the 149th year. And Lysias knew that the king was dead, and he appointed Antiochus, his son, to reign, whom he had raised from adolescence. And he called his name Eupator. And those who were in the stronghold had enclosed the Israelites by surrounding the holy places. And they continually sought to do evil to them and to support the Gentiles. And Judas intended to disperse them. And he called together all the people, in order to besiege them. And they came together and besieged them in the 150th year, and they made catapults and other machines. And certain ones of these, who were besieged, escaped. And some of the impious out of Israel joined themselves to them. And they went to the king, and they said, How long will you not act with judgment, and vindicate our brothers? We resolved to serve your father, and to walk according to his precepts, and to obey his edicts. And because of this, the sons of our people have alienated themselves from us, and they have put to death as many of us as they could find, and they have torn apart our inheritances. And they have not extended their hand against us only, but also against all within our borders. And behold, this day they have taken a position near the stronghold of Jerusalem to occupy it, and they have fortified the stronghold of Bethser. And unless you quickly act to prevent them, they will do greater things than these, and you will not be able to subdue them. And the king was angry when he heard this. And he called together all his friends, and the leaders of his army, and those who were over the horsemen. But there even came to him mercenary armies from other kingdoms and from the islands of the sea. And the number of his army was 100,000 footmen, and 20,000 horsemen, and 32 elephants trained for battle. And they traveled through Idumea, and they took a position near Bethser. And they fought for many days, and they made machines of war. But they came out and burnt them with fire, and they fought manfully. And Judas departed from the stronghold, and he moved the camp to Beth-Zechariah, opposite the camp of the king. And the king rose up, before it was light, and he forced his troops to march toward the way of Beth-Zechariah. And the armies prepared themselves for battle, and they sounded the trumpets. And they showed the elephants the blood of grapes and mulberries, to provoke them to fight. And they divided the beasts by the legions, and there stood by every elephant 1,000 men, with shields joined together, and with brass helmets on their heads. And 500 well-ordered horsemen were chosen for every beast. These were ready beforehand, and wherever the beast was, they were there, and whenever it moved, they moved, and they did not depart from it. Moreover, upon them there were strong wooden turrets, watching over every beast, with machines upon them, and on them were 32 valiant men, who fought from above, and an Indian to rule each beast. And the rest of the horsemen, he stationed here and there, in 2 parts, with trumpets to stir up the army and to urge on those who were slow to move within its legions. And so, when the sun reflected off the shields of gold and of brass, the mountains were resplendent from them, and they glowed like lamps of fire. And part of the king's army was divided to the high mountains, and the other part to the low places. And they went forth with order and caution. And all the inhabitants of the land were shaken at the voice of their multitude, and at the advance of the company, and at the clash of the armor. For the army was very great and strong. And Judas and his army drew near for battle. And there fell of the king's army 600 men. And Eleazar, the son of Sora, saw one of the beasts shielded with the king's shield, and it was higher than the other beasts. So it seemed to him that the king must be on it. And he gave himself for the freedom of his people, and to obtain for himself a name in eternity. And he ran up to it boldly in the midst of the legion, killing on the right and on the left, and they fell down before him on this side and that. And he went between the feet of the elephant, and put himself under it, and he killed it. And it fell to the ground upon him, and he died there. And, seeing the strength of the king and the forcefulness of his army, they turned themselves away from them. But the king's camp went up against them in Jerusalem. And the king's camp took up a position near Judea and Mount Zion. And he made peace with those who were in Bethzer. And they went out of the city, because they had no provisions in their confinement, for it was the Sabbath of the land. And the king captured Bethzer, and he stationed a garrison there to keep it. And he turned his camp against the place of sanctification for many days. And he stationed there catapults and other machines to cast fire, and windlasses to cast stones and darts, and small catapults to cast arrows and metal. But they also made machines against their machines, and they fought for many days. But there were no foods in the city, because it was the 7th year. And those who had remained in Judea were from the Gentiles, so they consumed all that they had left from what had been stored up. And there remained in the holy places a few men, for the famine had prevailed over them. And they were scattered, each one to his own place. Then Lysias heard that Philip, whom King Antiochus had appointed, when he was still alive, to raise his son, Antiochus, and to reign, had returned from Persia and Media, with the army that went with him, and that he sought to take upon himself the affairs of the kingdom. He hurried to go and to say to the king and the commanders of the army, "We are weakened every day, and our food is limited, and the place that we besiege is strong, and it is incumbent upon us to put the kingdom in order. And so now, let us bestow a pledge to these men, and make peace with them and with all their nation. And let us establish for them that they may walk according to their own laws, just as before. For, because of their laws, which we despised, they have become angry and have done all these things." And the idea was pleasing in the sight of the king and the leaders. And he sent to them to make peace. And they accepted it. And the king and the leaders swore to them. And they went out of the stronghold. Then the king entered into Mount Zion, and saw the fortifications of the place, and so he abruptly broke the oath that he had sworn, and he commanded the surrounding wall to be destroyed. And he departed in haste and returned to Antioch, where he found Philip ruling the city. And he fought against him and occupied the city. Sirach 16-18. You should not rejoice in impious children, if they are successful, nor should you take delight in them, if the fear of God is not in them. You should not approve of their life, nor should you look with favor on their labors. For one child who fears God is better than 1,000 impious children. And it is better to die without children than to leave behind impious children. By means of one person with understanding, a country will be inhabited. The tribe of the impious will become desolate. Many such things my eyes have seen, and greater things than these my ear has heard. In the synagogue of sinners, a fire will blaze forth, and amid an unbelieving people, wrath will flare up. The giants of antiquity did not obtain pardon for their sins, they were destroyed by trusting in their own abilities. And he did not spare the place of Lot's sojourn, and he abhorred them because of the arrogance of their words. He did not take pity on them, destroying an entire people, who even extolled themselves concerning their sins. And this was so with 600,000 men, who were gathered together in the hardness of their hearts. And if even a single obstinate person had escaped unpunished, it would be a wonder. For mercy and wrath are with him. He is powerful in forgiveness, and he pours forth wrath. As is his mercy, so also is his correction, he judges a man according to his works. The sinner, in his violations, will not escape, but the patience of the one who shows mercy will not be diminished. Every mercy will make a place for each man, according to the merit of his works, and according to the understanding of his sojourn. You should not say, I am hidden from God, or who from on high will take note of me? Or, among a great number of people, I will not be noticed. For what is my soul amid such an immense creation? Behold, the heavens, and the heaven of the heavens, the abyss, and the entire earth, and the things that are within these, will be shaken by his gaze. Together with mountains and hills, and the foundations of the earth. When God casts his gaze upon them, they will be struck with trembling. And concerning all these things, the heart is without understanding, but every heart is understood by him. And who will understand his ways, or the tempest, which no eye of man will see? For many of his works are concealed. But who will announce the works of his justice? Or who will endure them? For the testament is far from some persons, and the examination of each thing is in its end. Whoever diminishes the heart, thinks empty thoughts. For the imprudent and erring man thinks up foolishness. Listen to me, son, and learn the discipline of understanding, and attend to my words in your heart. And I will speak with equity about discipline, and I will strive to announce wisdom. So attend to my words in your heart, and I will speak with equity of spirit, about the virtues that God has set within his works from the beginning, and I will announce his knowledge in truth. With the judgment of God, his works have been done from the beginning, and from their institution, he himself distinguished their parts and set their beginnings, in their kinds. He has beautified their works unto eternity. They have neither hungered, nor labored, and they have not ceased from their works. Neither will any one of them cause anguish to his neighbor, forever. You should not be incredulous at his word. Afterward God looked with favor upon the earth, and he filled it with his goodness. The soul of every living thing brought word from before his face, and their return again is to him. God created man from the earth, and he made him according to his own image. And he returned him again to it, and he clothed him with virtue according to himself. He gave him the number and time of his days, and he gave him authority over all the things that are upon the earth. He placed the fear of him over all flesh, and he had dominion over wild beasts and flying things. He created from him a helper, similar to himself. He gave them counsel, and language, and sight, and hearing, and a heart in order to think. And he filled them with the discipline of understanding. He created within them the knowledge of the Spirit. He filled their heart with understanding, and he showed them both good and evil. He set his eye upon their hearts, to reveal to them the greatness of his works, so that they might highly praise the name of sanctification, and give glory to his wonders, so that they might declare the greatness of his works. In addition, he gave them discipline and the law of life, as their inheritance. He established an eternal covenant with them, and he revealed to them his justice and judgments. And there I saw the greatness of his honor, and their ears heard the honor of his voice, and he said to them, Beware of all iniquity. And he commanded each one concerning his neighbor. Their ways are always in his sight, they are not hidden from his eyes. Over each and every people, he has appointed a ruler. And Israel was made to be the manifest portion of God. And in the sight of God, all their works are like the sun. And his eyes, without ceasing, inspect their ways. The covenants are not hidden by their iniquity, and all their iniquities are in the sight of God. The almsgiving of a man is like a seal upon him, which will guard the grace of a man like the pupil of an eye. And afterward, it will rise up and repay them their reward, each one upon his head, and it will return to the hidden places of the earth. Now, to the repentant, he has given the way of justice, and he has strengthened those lacking in patience, and he has fastened them to a destiny of truth. Convert to the Lord, and relinquish your sins. Make supplication before the face of the Lord, and diminish your offenses. Return to the Lord, and turn away from your injustice, and have immense hatred for abomination. And acknowledge the justices and judgments of God, and stand firm in the circumstances set before you and in prayer to the Most High God. Go to the side of the holy generation, to those who live in order to give praise to God. You should not linger in the error of the impious, confess before death. Confession perishes from the dead as if it were nothing. Confess while living, you should give thanks while you are still alive and healthy. And you should praise God and glory in His compassion. How great is the mercy of the Lord, and His forgiveness, for those who convert to Him. For not all things can be in men, because the Son of Man is not immortal, and because they are pleased by the emptiness of malice. What is brighter than the sun? Yet this will fail. Or what is more wicked than that which flesh and blood has invented? And this will be reproved. He beholds the power of the heights of heaven. And all men are earth and ashes. The one who dwells in eternity created all things together. God alone will be justified, and He remains an invincible King for eternity. Who is able to declare His works? For who can examine His greatness? And who will announce the power of His magnitude? Or who would be able to describe His mercy? There is no diminishing, and no increasing, and there is no discovering the greatness of God. When man has reached the end, then he will begin. And when he ceases, he will be in need. What is man, and what is his grace? And what is his good, or what is his evil? The number of the days of men are as many as 100 years. Like a drop of water in the ocean, so they are considered to be. And like a grain of sand on the shore, so do these few years compare to the days of all time. For this reason, God is patient with them, and He pours forth His mercy upon them. He has seen that the presumption of their heart is evil, and He knows that their rebelliousness is wicked. Therefore, He has bestowed His forgiveness on them, and He has revealed to them the way of equity. The compassion of man is toward those closest to him. But the mercy of God is upon all flesh. He is merciful, and He teaches and corrects, like a shepherd with his flock. He takes pity on those who accept the doctrine of compassion, and He applies His judgments promptly. Son, in your good works, you should not complain, and in giving anything, you should not cause grief with evil words. Is heat not refreshed by the dew? So also is a good word better than a gift. Behold, is a word not greater than a gift? But both are with a justified man. The foolish place blamed sharply. And a gift from the undisciplined causes the eyes to fail. Before you judge, put justice in order within yourself, and before you speak, learn. Before you become sick, obtain medicine. And before you judge, examine yourself. And then you will find forgiveness in the sight of God. Before you become weak, humble yourself, and in a time of infirmity, show your way of life. Let nothing impede you from praying always. And then you will not dread to be justified, even unto death. For the reward of God dwells in eternity. Before you pray, prepare your soul. And do not choose to be like a man who tempts God. Remember the wrath that will be on the day of consummation, and remember the time of retribution, when He will turn away His face. Remember poverty in a time of abundance, and remember the deficiency of poverty in a day of riches. From morning until evening, the time will be changed, and all these are swift in the eyes of God. A wise man will be cautious in all things, and during a time of many offenses, he will be attentive against inaction. Anyone who is astute recognizes wisdom, and he will acknowledge anyone who finds it. Those who show understanding with words also have acted wisely themselves, and they have understood truth and justice, and they have fulfilled proverbs and judgments. You should not go after your desires, instead, turn away from your own will. If you offer your desires to your soul, this will cause you to become a joy to your enemies. Take no delight in disorderly gatherings, whether large or small, for their commission of offenses is unceasing. You should not be reduced by the contention of borrowing, even if there is nothing in your purse, for you would be contending against your own life. Proverbs 22 verses 17 through 21. Incline your ear, and listen to the words of the wise. Then apply your heart to my doctrine. It shall be beautiful to you, if you preserve it in your inner self, and it shall overflow from your lips, so that your confidence may be in the Lord. Therefore, I also have revealed it to you this day. Behold, I have written it for you in 3 ways, and with meditations and knowledge, so that I might reveal to you, firmly and with words of truth, in order to respond about these things to those who sent you.